Now, one person we did hear from today for the first time, Karen Reed herself, doubling down, of course, saying she did not do this. She wants to know who did.
Said it feels we're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in the only one trying to save his life.
Why'd you admit to it?
She didn't admit to it. She didn't admit to anything close to that. Nothing close to that. And you should know that.
That was like 3 or 4 times she admitted to it.
No, she didn't.
That's not true.
She asked a question. She asked a question, which is very different. She didn't admit to anything.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, here we go. Talking about Karen Reed today and what the Commonwealth is trying to do with a motion to get Richard Green, the defense expert, told the jury that Jennifer McCabe's hustling to die in the cold search was really 227 Commonwealth released and not 623 and 624 as Commonwealth experts Jessica Hyde and Ian Whiffen, who wrote a program in his it is a free program and has a lot to do with this software, just so that anyone can use this kind of software. Both say happened at 623 and 624. So what the Commonwealth is saying in very plain language, that this is debunked, should no longer even be a talking point. It will only confuse the jury. The Celebrate program had to be rewritten so that errors like this and misinterpretations or wrong interpretations of the data would not happen again. So they're saying, throw it all out. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at Richard Green, Jessica Hyde, some of Jessica Hyde's testimony today, all around this search. Because I remember during the trial after Jessica Hyde and Ian Whiffen's testimony, we thought, and finally Richard Green's, where he had to admit on the stand in cross-examination that, yeah, they rewrote the entire program because of this error, because of my error in identifying this timestamp, wrongfully identifying this timestamp as 227 when it happened at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m. in the morning. So the Free Karen readers are desperately holding on to this 2:27 a.m. time search because really the entire conspiracy is dependent on it, to say that, because why else would Jennifer McCabe be Googling at 2:27, house long to die in the cold, when we all know that it was, I believe, Jennifer McCabe when she said, Karen Reed asked me to look it up. at 6:23 and 6:24. And she's making errors, typing with her thumbs in the cold. So she has to look it up twice. But it's how Karen Reed does everything. And I was really surprised by the amount of people that did not really understand my point. I thought I made it clear, but obviously not. Yesterday, or the day before yesterday, excuse me, when I was talking about Karen Reed's confession, what she's telling her supporters through Natalie Bernschneider-Wawicki, that it's a mistake to think that this wasn't planned. The aim was to teach, I am paraphrasing, John a lesson at minimum. Now, of course, I don't think Karen Reed's going to say I did it to her supporters. But I do think that that is a confession. So for all those who pointed out, like, hey, no, I think she's talking about the conspirators. Yeah. And there is a pattern in people who talk to the police who are guilty, and when they ask things like, or if they're trying to blame it on someone, like a strange, cryptic other person that they caught a glimpse of, often the sketch artist will paint a picture that looks awful like an awful lot like themselves. So I thought that was a clear admission to her own motivations. But apparently a lot of you didn't understand that. Okay, back to Richard Green. Here we are with the Commonwealth's motion. Let's get to that first before we do anything else. But, we're talking about Karen Reed, and we need to look at how Karen Reed goes through the world. Is she a impulsive, spontaneous person, or is she a schemer and a planner? I would put her in the schemer and planner portion. She certainly is the architect of the whole witness harassment campaign. And like so many of the people I talk about on this channel, who I feel are guilty or have been convicted of heinous crimes, they do very little. They have a whole bunch of flying monkeys who do their bidding for them. And isn't it interesting that Karen Reed can't get the number for Jennifer McCabe from Kaylee? She needs Kaylee to call Jennifer McCabe. It's not like, oh, you have it on your phone. Can you give me her number? And that's the way she does things by proxy, by 1 degree of separation. So she always has a little bit of plausible deniability. And I thought the most interesting insight by, what is his name? Deception Detective, was Karen Reed expecting Jennifer McCabe and Kerry Roberts to discover John O'Keefe, and got frustrated when they didn't see. I don't know. Seems like she was banging pretty early on before they even had time. She wasn't waiting around. That's where, for the end of it. But was that the master plan, to gather them up, for them to discover John O'Keefe? I think the most important thing was that they be witnesses to her shock and mental breakdown, quote unquote, so she didn't have to talk to the police. But here's the Commonwealth. This is put up by Innocence Fraud Watch on her blog. Commonwealth's motion to exclude defense witness Richard Green's debunked opinions. Copy. So the Commonwealth respectfully moves this honorable court to exclude the proposed expert testimony of Richard Green relative to 2 issues. 1, the claim that Jennifer McCabe's phone Googled how long to TI die in cold, or Haas long to die in cold at any time prior to 6:23 a.m. on January 29th, 2022, and that Jennifer McCabe's phone incurred user deletions of any data related to Google searches. Exclusion, is appropriate because both claims lack any evidentiary support and the claims cannot be made in good faith. Allowing introduction of baseless claims without any scientific, forensic, or factual support would be misleading to the jury and disruptive to the interest of justice. The Commonwealth expert, Ian Whiffen, is Celebrite's senior digital intelligence expert and an expert in digital forensics. He has engaged in a comprehensive analysis of the two above claims lodged by Mr. Green. His analysis has included the implementation of forensic data science, personally reviewing the device data, properly and accurately employing Cellbrite technology, and a study of materials generated from the device. After a comprehensive study of the forensic data and consideration of Mr. Green's claims, Mr. Whiffen's opinions disproving Mr. Green's claims are unequivocal. Mr. Whiffen provides, quote, I can state with absolute certainty that there is no evidence whatsoever on this device that the Google searches how long to die in cold or how long to die in cold occurred prior to 6:23 a.m. on the 29th of January 2022, emphasis provided. Moreover, Mr. Whiffen concluded that there is no evidence that the user tried to delete any search history or that tampering occurred with any of the data I examined, unquote. Consequently, Mr. Green's testimony on these two issues is wrong, factually unsupported, and should not be admitted at the jury trial in this matter. The underpinnings of Mr. Green's testimony on these two issues fails to meet the requirements set forth in Dalbert versus Merrill Dow Farms, Inc., 509 US 579, and Commonwealth versus Lanigan, because the defendant cannot meet in burden to demonstrate that Mr. Green is qualified to testify to these two opinions. Mr. Green's opinions do not meet the minimum requirement of digital forensics and lack any scientific basis, and Mr. Green will be unable to provide any facts to support his previous testimony, which has been completely discredited relative to these two issues. Procedural history. On June 21st, 2024, Mr. Green testified on behalf of the defense. Mr. Green purported to be a forensic expert specializing in computer cloud surveillance systems and other systems. Mr. Green testified that he was asked to parse through data from phones belonging to Jennifer McCabe, Karen Reed, and John O'Keefe, but not Kaylee and not Carrie Roberts. It's just so, right? Just those three people. Not Kaylee's phone, not Carrie Roberts' phone, just those three phones. He said the Google search was found in, so when I'm talking about Kaylee, I'm talking about John O'Keefe's niece, who was first woken up by Karen screaming and demanding that she call Jennifer McCabe. Okay. He was asked to parse through data from phones belonging to Jennifer McCabe, Karen Reed, and John O'Keefe. He said the Google search was found in a write-ahead log where data is stored temporarily before it is written into the main database. Mr. Green claimed, quote, just by the nature of it, we'll find a lot in the newest artifacts in the wall file. Mr. Green also proclaimed that the search, quote, was in a deleted state, unquote. He testified that he found, quote, a lot, unquote, of other user-deleted artifacts in Jennifer McCabe's data from the morning of January 29, 2022. On April 11, 2023, hold on, guys. Mr. Richard Green submitted an affidavit on behalf of the defendant, opining that the search history information obtained from Jennifer McCabe's cell phone indicates that on January 29, 2022, at 2:27 and 40 seconds, the phone's user entered the following search in Safari: Haas long to die in cold. On January 21st, 2024, Mr. Green testified at the defendant's first trial and rendered a similar opinion, claiming that certain phone calls were user deleted. During cross-examination, Mr. Green was broad and vague about his training, experience, and lack of digital forensic certifications. Mr. Green concluded during his trial testimony that Cellbrite modified their software based on his interpretation of data from Jen McCabe's cell phone. Despite knowledge of his error, Mr. Green has yet to submit a revised written report or opinion. In response to Mr. Green's misconstructions, the Commonwealth retained two experts in digital forensics, Jessica Hyde and Ian Whiffen. During the defendant's first trial, the court permitted a courtroom demonstration by Mr. Whiffen to assist the jury in understanding digital forensics and how the Google searches were stored within the digital database, specifically the Safari internet browser. See generally Commonwealth versus Sosa. When digital evidence is voluminous, parties should consider authenticating and admitting excerpts when jury may find it difficult to master the technology to find and view relevant portions of evidence. Additionally, Jessica Hyde, a qualified forensics examiner, conducted an encompassing review of digital artifacts, file systems, and conducted independent peer-reviewed experiments to determine that Jennifer McCabe's phone was in use at 2:27 a.m. when the Safari browser was open and looking at a website for Hockomock Sports. At 6:23 a.m., the same Safari browser tab was engaged and a new search for how long was conducted. When Apple produces a suggestion for how long to digest food, the search is instead completed with how long to die in cold. At 6:23. A new search is conducted at 6:24 a.m. How long to die in cold. The finding was consistent with Trooper Parrino's review of the cell phone extraction and with the testimony of other witnesses. Richard Green's debunked opinions are not an example of a battle of the experts, best left to be resolved by the fact finder, but instead an attempt to infect the jury with an inadmissible opinion that is not promised on reliable digital forensic. Cellbrite has updated its software to prevent manipulation of data. Shortly before the defendant's first trial, Cellbrite created and introduced Physical Analyzer Software version 10.2. Since the defendant's first trial, Cellbrite has added another version of updated software, 7.67. The updated version removed the timestamp value from records sourced from the Safari's browser suite because further research shows the timestamps is not a reliable source for a timestamp relating to the URL shown. The basis for Mr. Green's contested opinions has been refuted not only by the Commonwealth's independent experts, but by Cellbrite itself, who has removed the type of timestamp relied on by Mr. Green from Cellbrite's decoding engine. Further, when Jennifer McCabe's cell phone extraction is analyzed in the newest version of Cellbrite, the 2:27 a.m. last visited timestamp no longer appears on the extraction report. Rather, the time shown represents the status of the browser tab and digital forensic artifacts pertaining to web history and Apple mobile Safari. Again confirmed that the How Long to Die in Cold Search occurred at approximately 6:24 a.m. Likewise, there is no evidence that the Google searches were user deleted. Even though Mr. Green's claims are wrong, the defendant herself has engaged in promoting this false narrative. In a June 20th, 2023 interview with Gretchen Voss, the defendant advanced this baseless claim. Karen Reed. First court appearance after we revealed that Jen McCabe, Ms. Little, Googled Mr. Yannetti. Yeah, defended. And it happened at the same time as the basketball search, which also wasn't in the report, nor was the How Long to Die at 6:23 that she admitted to. There were no Google activity in the Cellbrite report that was handed over to us as gospel. Redaction. Inadmissible evidence should always be excluded. Allowing debunked claims to reach the jury would necessarily risk misleading the jury and creating prejudice to the Commonwealth. See Commonwealth versus Hine. An expert is not permitted to testify to matters beyond an area of expertise or Commonwealth. So they're also asking for a hearing to determine his competency. And they want a is it called Daubert Lanigan standard required to prove? They want a hearing. So that's the that was a lot of reading there. Thank you for being patient. So that'll give you an idea. I mean, I know this is not my area or my strength, these kind of detailed digital forensics, but I think it's easily understandable and made easily understandable by both Ian Whiffen and Jessica Hyde's testimony. Let's look at a clip of Jessica Hyde's testimony.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hyde.
Good afternoon, sir.
Ms. Hyde, you just spent maybe 45 minutes to an hour, whatever the time period was, explaining to these jurors what is really a complex set of facts that led you to conclude that the 2:27 a.m. timestamp on that Google search was triggered by the closing of a tab. Did I essentially sum that up correctly?
Essentially, except it's not a 2:27 a.m. timestamp on a Google search. It's a 2:27 a.m. timestamp on a tab.
Fair enough. Thank you. And in the context or in the course of your explanation, you discussed WAL files.
That is correct.
SQLite database.
Yes.
plist database.
Yes.
Knowledge C database.
Yeah. plist is not a database. Just it's a structure. So just a small correction.
Thank you for the correction. Opening tabs and closing tabs, correct?
Yes.
And other issues related to your analysis of the phone extraction, correct?
Would you call them issues? Or
well, maybe that's a bad word to use. Other elements.
elements? Fair enough. Yes.
I'm really not trying to trick you.
So if you're just tuning in, you're watching David Yannetti cross-examine Commonwealth forensic expert Jessica Hyde.
I know I wouldn't be able to. Would you agree with me that another simple explanation for that 2:27 a.m. timestamp was that the user of that iPhone conducted that search at or before 2:27 a.m.?
Can you rephrase, please?
I'm going to phrase it the same way and hope I can
Repeat it. Repeat it, please.
Thank you. Would you agree with me that another simple explanation for that 2:27 a.m. timestamp was that the user of that iPhone conducted that search at or before 2:27 a.m. on January 29th of 2022?
That timestamp is not indicative of a time of search. So the question is difficult to answer because I can't say that that timestamp tells me anything about the time of search.
Okay. So as I take your answer, you're not denying that the timestamp and whatever you get from that timestamp doesn't rule out that the Google search was done at or before 2:27 a.m., correct?
If I'm understanding your question, there was a double negative, so I just want to clarify. The question is if the timestamp could exist because of a search happening at that time?
No.
Okay.
What I'm saying is your analysis of the
He's trying to trick her with double negatives. She's like, I don't know about these double negatives. Let me just reassert what you're trying to ask me. And not saying that you might be a sleazy defense lawyer trying to tap dance in front of the jury and trick me into saying something I don't believe. Funny.
does not rule out that the user of that phone performed that Google search at or before 2:27 a.m.
There is no indication of a Google search at or before 2:27 a.m.
But again, I'm getting to whether you can rule that out, ma'am. That's really the crux of my question. Can you rule out that the user of that phone conducted that search at or before 2:27 a.m. on January 29th?
There is a very unlikely possibility based on the fact that there is no evidence that the search occurred before that time. That's just like saying that the user searched for pandas at 2:27 a.m. Could you rule that out? I can't rule out something that doesn't exist.
All right. Well, you would agree with me that with regard to your analysis.
I can't rule out. Are we sure that Jennifer McCabe wasn't searching David Yannetti as the greatest lawyer in the world? Are we sure? I can't rule out something that doesn't exist. But you can't rule it out. No, I can rule it out because it doesn't exist, David Yannetti.
This phone extraction.
Mm-hmm.
You were given very specific instructions in terms of what to look at, correct?
Correct. I had a very limited scope in this analysis.
And who was it that gave you that limited scope?
That scope was relayed to me by Detective Tully.
Oh.
Right, but Richard Green was also given a similarly limited scope. When you're not looking at Kaylee's phone or any or Carrie Roberts' phone or anyone else, it's just Jennifer McCabe's phone. And John O'Keefe.
And Detective Tully instructed you specifically to only look at the part of the phone extraction that dealt with the Safari search history.
Safari search history specific to January 29th, 2022. That is correct.
And he instructed you not to look at anything else on the phone, correct?
I looked at related artifacts such as the such as what was being done at that time, the phone being on, the phone being used, but not anything else outside of that, correct?
And you were not instructed, for instance, to look at other user activity on the phone, including examining call logs on the phone, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that if you were allowed or instructed to examine the call logs, that could reveal deletion of calls that morning, correct?
Of course. Well,
Okay, the objection system.
Thank you.
Any follow-up, Mr. Lally?
No, Your Honor, no redirect.
Ms. Hyde, you are all set.
thank you very much.
All right. And I'm going to take just a tiny quick break. I'm going to get back a few thank yous, and we're going to look at Richard Green's cross-examination. I believe, if my memory is correct, but I have to check, that tomorrow morning is the continuation of Marie Russell, Dr. Marie Russell's cross-examination. But I may be wrong. I may have the date wrong, but I think it's coming this week. Thought it was tomorrow. If it is, I will be live streaming it. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back with some thank yous and Richard Green's cross-examination. Don't go anywhere. Be back in 1 minute.
We don't take a break. Grab a snack or maybe a glass of wine. Roberta will be back in no time. This podcast is listener supported, so smash that like button and subscribe or become a patron for exclusive content if you are so inclined. Have something to say? Shoot Roberta a super chat. She will do her best to read it on air without delay. Now Roberta's back and ready to put the true back in true crime. Here's Roberta.
Okay, I just want to thank Marcy, Roseanne, and Susan for becoming Patreon members. You guys will be included at the end of the show shortly. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm working on a new episode for Patreon. Come out shortly. Also, hey, Dean Walker. Nice to see you. Thanks for the super sticker. Also, let's just, while we're at it, let's get to your comments, shall we?
We got your comments. You had something to say. You were insightful. Oh, so clever. So Roberta's going to read your comments. Hey, Roberta, read those comments.
Do you believe, from Dougie Morrison says, do you really believe that her parents are really going to lie under oath? Yes. Yes. It would be incredible for them to plead the fifth. They might plead the fifth. They might give them immunity so they don't plead the fifth. There's all sorts of things being talked about. But I can see her father and mother lying under oath to protect her. Sally Koppel says, hi, Roberta, your song about Karen Reed is in my brain like a loop. Christmas morning, we were in the kitchen getting dinner ready, and I started singing. By the time dinner was eaten, everyone was singing except Graham and Crab, who were dancing. Thank you for providing a great Christmas memory. You're welcome. Wish you had the tape of that. I would love to see that. BB Jones says, I'm not free Karen Reed, far from it, but my read is the plan she was referring to was the McAlberts to teach John a lesson. Right, but Karen Reed is goes into her imagination and can pick anything she wants out. And she comes with, this was a planned event, and it was to teach John a lesson. She could create anything. Not that they got in a fight about police work or they insulted something about John O'Keefe and a fight broke out. I mean, anything. She comes up with this it is a grave mistake not to consider that this crime was planned and that the purpose was to teach John a lesson. Pretty interesting that those are the things that she comes up with. I think it's telling. You can disagree with me. It fits her personality and her actions, the way she operates. Now on to Richard Green. Here's his cross-examination. Richard Green, we can look at his... Maestro was pointing out his unfinished website. Here, I'll just show you before we go through his testimony. But it has these nonsense placeholders in it. So like if you not sure where it is exactly I'm not sure exactly where it is, but there's some of it is unfinished. But you get an idea. United States Forensic. And then he has 3 different addresses here. Florida, Michigan, and Indiana. So he does computer forensics, mobile device forensics, cyber investigations, e-discovery, cell tower forensics, audio forensics, and CCTV forensics. Fast client portal, etc. Okay. And one of his places is out of a strip mall. It's all there. Maestro says you have to dig around a bit in the site, but it's all there. So some of it's unfinished. So have you ever come across those things that are just unfinished? Oh, here it is. Oh, no, it isn't. I'll find it. But it's kind of unfinished. Here we go. I'll show you under project description. Here we go. I'll just show you guys this. So you won't think I'm lying to you. Here it is. Project description. The customer is very important. The customer will be followed by the customer for cartoons of Usman. So it's just nonsense. This is what happens in unfinished under project description. Just nonsense placeholder for you to put your own words in there. And I'll show you one other thing. Before we look at his testimony. So that's a shot of one of his offices. It's next to PJ's Seafood and Restaurant, PJ's Party Room, French nails, black sheep, tattoos, etc. All right. So here we go with this. If you're just tuning in, we're watching defense expert Richard Green's cross-examination. And everybody said that I am right, that it's tomorrow. So at 9 a.m. tomorrow, I'll be live on this channel, live streaming Dr. Marie Russell's cross-examination. That will be like Christmas. The first part of it was so delicious. I can't wait for the second part.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Do you know who Miss Jessica Hyde is? I do. Are you aware that she wrote a report in relation to this case? Yes. Specifically in regard to the Google searches for Ms. McCabe's phone that you were just talking about? Yes, sir. It was very specific about that search. And have you had a chance to review that report? I have. You also know who Ian Whiffen is? Certainly, yes. And are you aware that he wrote several reports or submitted several items in relation to, again, the exact topic that you're testifying about in relation to the Google searches on Ms. McCabe's phone? Yes, sir. I understand that. And have you had a chance to review those materials as well? Yes, sir. You understand that they both disagree with what your opinion is in relation to those searches? I absolutely understand that, sir. Now, just as far as your qualifications and certifications go, I'm just having a difficult time. From the certifications that you have, at what point were you, or what, if any, certifications do you have with reference to Cellbrite as a tool, as far as your use and interpretation of data from Cellbrite? Certainly. So my certifications are much more broad. They have to do with a lot of the fundamentals and how we conduct the investigations and what tools we should know, and when we need to know we need to do more work and such like that. Cellbrite, I do not have any specific Cellbrite certifications. They offer many of them. However, I have participated in, God, I can't even count, hundreds of their training events that they offer, both Cellbrite, Axiom, Belkasoff. They all provide the community with fantastic support as far as that. And although certainly a class can be very good, but you really need to stay up to speed. You've got to participate in the most recent.
Yeah, staying up to speed is very important. If he goes through a hearing, certainly I would think that they would bring up his own words here. Staying up to speed is very important. Like when they have to rewrite the entire program and update it for errors like yours in interpretation of data. Oh, whoops. Sorry. I just went backwards.
Recent
apologies.
Understanding being put out there, even in the changes of their tools, will change from one version to another. And so, to the point, as far as you have no certifications in regard to Cellbrite as a tool and how to use it, those kind of things? That's correct, sir. Okay. And in this specific instance, at any point, did you reach out to Cellbrite to go over sort of your findings or your opinions in relation to this search? I did. And who, if anyone, did you speak with from Cellbrite? As close as I can remember, I know it was Leo, and I believe it was Santos. And do you know what part of Cellbrite they work in or what they do? Well, he was in the technical support and contacted him. He had informed me that they had elevated this up to some higher level technical support when they came back. His comments to me, if you want to hear them, was that this. Okay. Capture his comments, but at some point, I understand. You talked to technical support, is that correct? Absolutely. And they indicated that they would refer you to actually Mr. Whiffen's team? No, sir, they did not. So you weren't told that you were referred to Mr. Whiffen's team?
I mean, how big are those shoulder pads? I mean, could those shoulder pads be any bigger? I'm sorry for those watching or listening on podcast. The defense witness, Richard Green, has some massive, almost David Byrne, stop making sense, big white suit. It is shoulder pads in his black suit. You're just enveloping him. He looks like he could be an extra on The Sopranos. I mean,
Team, and you weren't contacted by anyone from Mr. Whiffin's team?
No, and I forget the exact date. A couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, out of the blue, I got an email from Ms. Whiffin saying, and I can't, I don't want to misquote him, but certainly I got an email from
I'm not asking
him.
you about any specific conversations
Okay.
that you had. What I'm asking, and I'm asking about a time period more back in 2022.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
Back in 2022, did you reach out to Cellbrite in relation to this search and your opinions related to it?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, was that the point that you spoke to someone from technical support?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, did someone from technical support actually refer you or tell you that they were referring you to Mr. Whiffin's team?
No, sir, I had absolutely no idea about that.
So no one from Mr. Whiffin's team reached out to you, and then you just never called them back? That didn't happen?
Now that I'm aware.
Now, you were asked to look at a couple different phones, and I'm assuming by counsel for the defendant, correct?
Can you say that once again? I'm sorry.
You were asked to look at 3 different phones is what your testimony was, and I'm assuming
Correct.
that was by some counsel for the defendant, correct?
But,
No one else asked you to look at these phones, correct?
oh, correct. Yes, it was from the defense asked me to, yes.
And so the phones that you were asked to look at were Mr. O'Keefe's phone, the defendant's phone, and Ms. McCabe's phone, correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as Kerry Roberts' phone, were you ever asked to look at that?
No.
And with respect to the defendant's phone, was there any GPS location information or data that you observed in her phone?
So we had an indication that location had been using, there was something called Apple Map tiles. And those probably, when you use the Apple Map app, that it, in order for it to work, it will create these little tiles or little pieces of pictures, and they get
so he wasn't asked to look at Carrie Roberts' phone. Exactly. That's what I said. Here's what I'm talking about. The David Byrne suit for all those. That's what I'm just same as it ever was. Same as it ever was.
stitched together to give you the view that you see on your phone. Now, for that had been working, we know location data had to be working. This particular location data, the location data cache, is known to only be present on the phone for a couple weeks. Now, what I don't know, and Mr. Lally, if I'm going too far, just please stop me. What I don't know, what measures were taken to preserve that data, whether it was put in airplane mode, where the location services were turned off, whether it was put in a Faraday bag. And quite frankly, Mr. Lowry, I don't know if they did all that, if the location data would have remained or not. I've never tested that, but all indications, it would have had location data.
I was told to stay away from any location data in connection to Miss Reed's phone. Just ignore all the location data having to do with Karen Reed's phone. By the way, there's a rumor going around that Karen Reed visited John O'Keefe's body before 5 a.m. I don't know where people are getting this wildness from. We know that she woke up Kaylee at 4:30, so I don't think... clearly she was in the house.
On the day that it was seized, because we received the Apple Map tile. But when I got the full extraction, there was no location data there. Now, I did observe...
So there was no GPS location data on the defendant's phone, correct?
Correct.
From what you observed.
And again, if I'm... there was... I did find deleted location data from April of 2022.
Now, with respect to the defendant's phone, did you also find deleted web history data from the afternoon of January 29th, 2022?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't observe that.
Didn't observe it, or didn't look for
it? You know, I really don't have a recollection if I specifically looked for deleted data. I don't believe I did. I don't know if I would have had to.
I'm not looking for anything that Karen Reed deleted. Come on, I'm getting paid by the defense. Come on. Now we have the foggy memory. I just, lawyers will tell you when you're being questioned to say, I don't remember, to difficult questions, because it's not illegal to have a bad memory, but it is illegal to commit perjury on the stand.
Have a cause to.
Now, with reference to, you were asked some question about location accuracy within 3 feet. You did some sort of thing last night on Cellhawk using that tool. Is that correct?
Certainly.
And you were asked to do that after Trooper Parrino testified yesterday. Is that correct?
I understand you testified yesterday.
And so, with relation to you creating sort of that document, and that's now been marked as an exhibit, was that something that Mr. Yannetti asked you to do in relation to Trooper Parrino's testimony yesterday?
Well, in all fairness, you need to ask Mr. Yannetti.
She could have gone back before she got Carrie and Jen, before she hooked up with them, but not before, not the 523 voicemail. John, is that you? Thanks, Jean. Should go over that. Could have been when she was passing by. Hopefully it will be cleared up by the new data. She definitely was seen going in that direction, but I don't think they could exactly prove that she went there.
I could make an assumption here. I mean, if
I'm not.
I don't know quite.
Doing anything.
I'm not trying not to answer you, but I was asked by Mr. United to perform that search.
So, Mr. Lally, please be calm, Mr. Lally.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Green, with respect to that 3 feet of accuracy, are you aware that what Trooper Parrino was testifying to in regard to that had absolutely nothing to do with phone applications or anything to do with data from a phone or a Cellhawk or a tool or anything like that?
Now, I don't know the full extent of what Mr. Parrino would have been testifying to.
And so you're not aware that his testimony was actually in regard to reviewing cruiser camera video from the Canton Police Department and photographs of where Mr. O'Keefe's body was, and then mapping that using GPS latitude and longitude.
Objection.
Based on that within a 3 feet accuracy.
The objection sustained. Ask it differently.
Are you aware of any of what Trooper Parrino testified to yesterday?
What you're mentioning, I may vaguely be remembering, and again, I'm not trying to not answer your question exactly. My conversation with Mr. Yannetti is 3 foot when it comes to GPS data. Can you tell 3 feet from GPS data? And no, it's not known to be that reliable, and particularly Apple location services. How that applies to the trooper's testimony, I can't say with specificity. I'm happy to opine on location data, though.
There's no question.
Okay.
Sir, but thank you. I may have a moment, John.
Sure.
I'm not trying to not answer your questions. Boy, that's a telling admission in the negative, isn't it? I'm not trying to not answer your questions. I just am not answering your questions.
Now, sir, with reference to Safari and deleted tabs, isn't it true that there is no way for a user to delete a tab, only to close it? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, when you close a tab, all right, you're taking it out of the active state, and it's going to an inactive state that some people could call deleted. Now, the Safari history allows you to go in and delete history by certain date ranges, but you can also go into specific websites that you visited and delete those. Now if you want me to continue, the WAL file itself, you can't open up a WAL file and say, oh, I want to delete that record. But functioning the phone through the user interfaces will have an effect of deleting data within that WAL file.
Isn't it also true that Celebrite uses that red X to annotate that the record is no longer active and has been recovered, which would then make it incumbent upon the examiner, being you in this instance, to determine if it was actually deleted, correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. It's yes.
That's all I'm asking, sir.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for asking. I've been watching so many of these judges getting confirmed in the confirmation hearing in the Senate. And one is worse than the next. One didn't know what a Brady motion was. I think 95% of my audience knows what that is. Never seen it, thought it had something to do with the Second Amendment. But they say that in those hearings, they're like, thank you, Senator, for that randomly hassling question. Thank you for randomly hassling me about how many of my decisions have been overturned or randomly quizzing me on the Constitution. That's what that thank you for asking reminded me of.
Now, you stated in your affidavit, in your testimony, that you used the Sanderson SQLite or SQLite Forensic Explorer to examine the Safari tabs DB associated with the WAL file log. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, in your analysis using that Sanderson Forensic Explorer, was there an indication that House Long to Die in Cold was found in the WAL file?
Yes, sir.
Now, with regard to that, did you independently verify the cause of that timestamp that you observed there?
Yes, sir.
Now, is it your interpretation that the timestamp means the search appeared at that time solely based on the naming of the field in the database?
No, sir.
Now, can a WAL file contain items that are so new that they're not yet committed to the database?
Yes, sir. That's the purpose of it.
So the WAL file holds the newest information until it's merged to the database, including additions, deletions, changes, all of those items, correct?
That is correct.
Now, according to your affidavit, the device was in active use between 2:23 a.m. and 2:31 a.m. And just to be clear, I'm talking about Ms. McCabe's device, correct?
Correct.
And what other searches did you see at that time, and where were they performed?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I couldn't quite hear you.
Searches did you observe in that time frame, and where were they performed?
Well, there were a number of websites, including the Rainy Men exhibit that we did. There was Ozone Basketball, I believe. There, Hockermont, Smith. And I can tell you that those, similarly, the last entry with those there is the browser state DB file. It's not at the beginning. It's not at the end. And I have a couple thoughts on why that may be in regards to Ms. Hyde and Ms. Whiffen. I'm happy to share those with you.
I'm not asking you anything about that, sir.
Very
What I'm
good.
asking is it possible for a change request?
He's going to critique Ian Whiffen and Jessica Hyde's work? Oh, boy. He has some ideas why they might be wrong.
In the wall to a SQLite database pertaining to one particular field, leaving the other fields as what they were previously.
I want to answer your question as well as I can. So can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. Is it possible for a change request in the wall to a SQLite database pertaining to one particular field, leaving the other fields as what they were previously?
I'm having a little trouble answering this. So if I'm understanding correctly, when the WAL file gets written to the database, and could that have made the change ending with this deleted record? Is that the question? I'm sorry. I want to answer you. I'm just
That's okay.
a little lost on how you're asking it.
Understand the question?
Sorry?
Do you not understand the question?
Why don't you move on, Mr. Meyer?
So is it possible that the URL field, which has the website name, was updated to the newest search while the timestamp retained the original search? Is that possible?
No, not the way on this particular phone, in this particular iOS, and also with the user interacted with it. that it would have been at the 227 or before. The way this very specific iOS was happening, that is consistent with all the other ones that I observed out there on the phone related to specific web searches and activity.
Was it possible that the search for How Long to Die in the Cold at 6:24 a.m. was the most recent search completed in the tab?
Oh, well, not in that tab, but I certainly agree with you that there was a second search done at around that time.
Now, is it also possible that the search that you assert took place at 2:27 and 40 seconds in the morning is the same as the search that took place at 6:24:51 a.m. for that same search?
Yeah, that's inconsistent with the actual data I'm seeing on this actual phone with this precise iOS version.
Now, as far as the search in Safari with the string, as far as the smotot.apple.com included, is it? You recall that search as far as being a suggestion from Apple, from the iOS, as far as the search with how long to digest food?
Okay, I didn't hear your whole question, but I heard the last part about how long to digest food, so I can opine on that. So my feeling on that is when the How Long to Die and Cold was put in, that was most likely a Apple suggestion. And I've done some testing. Now, the time period I'm doing my testing, is after the fact that this would have actually occurred. But as I tested that on a live phone and using a Google search, I could see that how long to digest food would come up. I also noticed the specific phrase, how long does it take to die from hypothermia? So as you do this Google search, you try to repeat what's being done. Those are two suggestions that actually came up.
And so that was something that was a suggestion and not something that was actually searched, correct?
So is anyone else thinking about the defense theory or Karen Reed's theory that Jen McCabe Googled this at 2:27 a.m. and then Googled it again at 6:24 a.m.? Wouldn't it be odd to get an answer and then when you're right there with Karen Reed screaming and running around with her like a chicken with her head cut off, that you'd want to Google it again? Isn't that, it just seems odd to me.
Yeah, no, and I know that's different from my affidavit from about a year and a half ago, in all fairness, but
that's entirely different.
One person,
David, correct?
Mr. Lally,
I'm sorry.
one person at a time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, yeah, in fairness, I want to give you my best knowledge as I understand it saying here today, including after my review of Mr. Whiffen and Ms. Hyde's report. So I want to do everything I can to shine as much light and clarity on this as possible. So as I repeated, since that time and did the search, I would notice that is one of the things that would come up, and it would have a little picture of like a dinner plate or something like that. And there was actually a similar, if not the same picture found in the artifacts of that phone.
And so just to conclude, that's not what you said in your affidavit that was actually filed under pains and penalties of perjury with this court, correct?
Yes, and on that day, that is what my true and proper belief was. Okay, since further testing, I have found that I now believe that was probably an automatic one, and if I've caused you any distress, I apologize.
It doesn't cause me any distress.
Okay.
What I'm asking, sir, is that that's what you filed because that's what you thought at the time, correct?
Yes, sir.
And subsequently, you've done further testing, and that's shown that you were wrong, correct?
That is correct.
Now, according to your affidavit, there was a search for how long to digest food at 6:23:49 a.m. that precedes the search for how long to die, and the misspelling here would be the key CLKD at 6:23:51 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, is it possible that the how long to digest food was a predictive suggestion from Apple rather than a search entered by the user? Is that also correct?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I believe.
Yeah, it seems likely. that you're not gonna. You're like, how long to digest food? When you're looking up such a, well, we know the details of how she was looking it up, but you're gonna really look up how long to digest food before you lazily get to how long to die in cold?
That it was, if it had picked up a earlier search from 227 of how long to die in the cold, and then you went to retype it in, it may have then tried to give you something similar at the 623 and 624 timelines. So hopefully that answers your question.
So steps, going to Mr. O'Keefe's health data, steps doesn't necessarily mean that someone is physically taking steps, correct?
Again, the research that's done for this is steps tend to be a very accurate artifact.
So steps could not also be coincided with, say, movement in a car or other sort of movement of the phone as far as the health data is concerned?
Sure. Well, I did, geez, quite some time ago, do some testing with an actual iPhone 11, the same make and model, and took a drive and tried to see if it would register steps. It did not. I sat in a chair and tried to duplicate how I thought I would walk to see if it recorded steps. It did not. I took the phone from the floor to the ceiling to see if it would record a flight of stairs. It did not. The only, with that iPhone 11, same make and model that I got, it was very consistent with me actually doing walking steps, and that was whether I had it in my shirt pocket, my pants pocket, or clipped onto my belt.
That's your testimony?
That is my testimony, yes, sir.
Now, are you familiar with GPS native locations?
Yes, sir.
And GPS native locations takes its data as far as defining latitude and longitude from a number of different sources, correct?
Well, true GPS, okay, is going to take it from the GPS network. What you may be thinking of is assisted GPS, which the iPhone uses, and that assisted GPS will try to, it kind of does a crowdsourcing. So it'll look at cell towers, what's in range as far as like Wi-Fi's and a number of other devices to try to get you an enhanced GPS location and give you the best data possible.
So it takes GPS native locations within an Apple iOS device, takes from 4 different sources. Isn't that correct?
I actually don't hear many free Karen Reed people talking about that anymore. When John O'Keefe was at an intersection with Karen Reed driving, showed him going up and down steps. So the free Karen Reed people are saying it shows him going up and down steps in the home. But you can see he hadn't reached the home yet. It was at an intersection.
It tries to get from a variety of sources, like I just mentioned. Not all would be available.
Now, with regard, did you look at any GPS native location data with regard to Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
Yes, sir.
And would you agree then that the GPS native locations didn't record any movement of that phone after 12:25 a.m.?
12:25. You know, I would have to look at the exhibit to see what the time of that last entry was. I don't want to misstate something to you, sir.
Now, you were asked about sort of the elevation change in 3 floors, ascending, descending, and saying that you couldn't pinpoint a time period or within that 12:21 to 12:24 time period from the health data. Is that correct?
Correct. It happened somewhere within that time.
Could you pinpoint more specifically if you looked at the GPS native location data?
No, well, we're talking Apple Health and GPS location. So
But you said you couldn't do it.
I'm sorry, which one are you asking about? Please.
What I'm asking is, you said you couldn't pinpoint it within the GPS health data. What I'm asking is, if you had looked at the GPS native location data, could you give a more specific pinpoint
Objection.
as to where Mr. O'Keefe's phone was?
I'm going to allow that.
Maybe we can see briefly, Jeri?
Okay.
Okay, let's move forward, a little
Okay.
break in the
So
testimony.
the location, are you looking for a yes or no? I'm sorry.
Yes or no?
I try to. There was, yes, there was location data.
Wouldn't it be great to just see him just flip a coin? So you're heads yes, tails no. You need a yes or no answer. Let me just flip a coin here.
Within that time period. Okay.
And are you aware that Mr. O'Keefe's phone from the GPS native location data was actually a half-mile away from 34 Fairview Road at the time that it made those recordings in the GPS Apple Health data?
Right, yes, I understand he was using Waze, and it had made that recording. I understand that. That's why the finding that 3 minute and 1 second offset brings into serious doubt if that time was accurate. And when you apply that to the location offset, then the Apple Health data and the GPS all aligns. Now, I have not decoded Waze and found out what functions they were calling and all that. And I don't mean to indicate that I have, but I mean that the latest version of Axiom is bringing that up as an artifact and a timestamp related to Waze. And in the case of here, where minutes are important, I thought it proper that I bring this to the attention of the case as a possible explanation.
As a possible explanation?
As a possible explanation, sir, yes.
Now, the 3 different clocks that you were talking about, are you aware that those are actually associated to power usage and not applications?
Right, that power usage was directly related to the Waze application.
So it's your testimony that those 3 clocks apply to the times in Waze? Is that your testimony?
I'm saying that the timestamps were directly related to Waze.
So what I'm thinking about is if Richard Green is completely thrown out or very limited, and Marie Russell is either thrown out or very limited in what she can testify for the defense, what other kind of defense witnesses are we going to see? And would we see Karen Reed testify, something blogger Aidan Carney, Turtle Boy Carney, has been talking about? He wants Karen Reed to testify. But if it's anything like her interviews, I don't think she comes off well when she speaks for herself. So I think she'd be a terrible witness for herself, and then you open the door to a whole lot of other testimony, just having her up on the stand. I don't know. Who would they have? I mean, I'm sure there's tons of these defense experts. Dominic Dunn used to call them whores of the court. So they can be bought by either side. Although when I was a juror, we had one defense witness talk about children and SA, and it was very helpful to one juror. I didn't find it particularly helpful, but one juror found it incredible. So you don't know, I kind of disregarded it. I knew a lot of it, and I don't know. I didn't find it particularly helpful, but one juror did, and that helped convict this guy. So don't know, but who would they have? I mean, it really looked like just the bottom of the barrel defense witnesses to my eye. But I'm sure there's always someone willing to come out of the woodwork like Marie Russell, either for attention seeking. She's a true crime fan, attach herself to a high profile trial. There's always someone who seems willing to come out and testify for Karen Reed.
It was reported by axiom when you apply the filter and say, show me all the artifacts related to ways. These were artifacts that came up related to the ways bundle. So I guess you need to give it the weight it deserves. Like I said, I've not decoded ways. That's not something that has been done, but I think we need to consider the 3-minute offset as it applies to giving significance to the Apple Health data and the Waze GPS.
Now, turning to Ms. McCabe's phone again, as far as the search, what you indicated as last view time, are you aware that that is actually related to a time that it was actually focused on the screen as opposed to your interpretation of it?
I'm aware that from that it appears to be the last time and date it was focused, and when it was no longer was focused, that's when the timestamp was written. That's what's consistent with the other data on this particular phone on this very specific iOS.
Now, with regard to looking at this search, you mentioned that you used something called an ArtX tool. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And are you aware that's a tool that was actually created by Mr. Ian Whiffen?
Absolutely.
And with regard to this specific issue, as far as how this data is being interpreted from the browser state DB versus the knowledge C database and the wall file and all of those, the P list and all of those other kinds of things, as far as the misinterpretation of the data has then caused Mr. Whiffen in further versions of Cellbrite to revise that so that this kind of error can't occur.
Sure, happy to answer that. So Mr. Whiffen's testing was not done with this specific version of the iOS. The iOS has been known to be changing the way this artifact works. To do proper analysis, the researcher that he is, he would need to work with that same iOS. Now, in regards to the Cellbrite question.
So he's saying that Ian Whiffen didn't work with the right iOS version? I'm remembering his testimony. He said he looked at several versions.
They have two versions of the Cellbrite Physical Analyzer. One is the standard physical analyzer that's been out for several years now, probably is majority use in the community. It's a tool that takes that raw data and it puts it into human terms that we can look at and understand and write reports like you've been seeing here. So they have the Cellbrite Physical Analyzer that's out there. I believe it's 7.68, but don't quote me on that. And then they have a new version that's come out called Insights, and this operates more on where you can put multiple cases in and that. It's only the Insight versions that they have bothered updating and no longer reporting on that time. Their current physical analyzer program, and I tested this a few days ago, still reports on that search occurring, and that timestamp. So currently Cellbrite is providing examiners, law enforcement, and people worldwide with two different versions giving two different results. That I can't speak to more than that, other than I've tested that, and I see how those programs are working now.
My question, sir, yes or no, is are you aware that Cellbrite has had to modify their software based on misinterpretation of data, as you've done in this case?
Yes, with the asterisk, they updated one of two programs.
There you go. There you go. For those in the back, yes, Cellbrite had to update their software to avoid misreading data like you have done in this case. So errors like yours don't happen again. They had to rewrite their software.
Nothing further.
And he says they haven't done it in the other program. We'll see if there's a longer hearing or an argument around this. We'll see what the Commonwealth has to say about that. So that's what I have for today, guys. Please, I'll be back tomorrow. I'm wondering if I should start earlier and we could watch from the beginning of the cross-examination on, maybe. So maybe I'll be on at maybe like 8 o'clock. I have to look at how long it is. And then we can go right into what will be, I think, a delicious hearing. Dr. Marie Russell. Everybody remember her? Everybody remember her testimony? And I think that they will have really drilled her. Robert Alessi, Karen Reed's new pro bono lawyer, has really drilled her before this hearing in how to properly answer these questions. But I think over time, that can work for only so long. That kind of practice can only work for so long. And then, what I'm predicting is she will do fairly well in the beginning and then disintegrate as she goes along. That's what I'm predicting. But tune in tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. And we'll start with the beginning of her cross-examination, and we'll go right into it when it starts, the hearing. It starts at 9 a.m. Eastern. So have a great night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Gonna go out with my hit single, I Hit My Boyfriend With My Car. Have a great night, everybody.
I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system a clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mom. My innocence fraud campaign is my biggest hit yet. I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system a clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mom.